Hello everybody, how are you? Long time no speak or no see, but hey ho. So anyway, today I work in a historical site now. I don't do the old driving anymore. And as part of my job, when people appear and come up to our site, I welcome them and I always ask them where they're from. Because I want to know, you know, are they from Scotland, are they from England, where they got from England, which country they're from, to just straight away build up a bit of rapport before I go into my dialogue about the site I work at and tell them about a little bit of the history. So today, a group of people, maybe 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people turned up in like 2 cars or 3 cars. So I approached them all and said, hello, you know, welcome. And I said, where you're from, and it was different. Yeah, I'm from Staffordshire, I'm from Malaysia, I'm from Wallasey. And I went, oh, I says, I used to live in New Brighton. He says, well, actually meant New Brighton. I says, okay. I says, I used to live in a place called Vaughan, something. He says, yeah, Vaughan Road. I says, that's it, near a park. They named the park. And I says, yeah, I knew the family who looked after the hardware shop at the end of the road, the Eichelsheims. Yeah. And then he went, yeah, there was Thomas, Jerry, Eddie, and and there was one who I died with, who died as well, yeah, Philip. And he says, yeah, Philip died. I'm thinking, how extraordinary, what's the chances that we get this family come from the Wirral, who know these people. They not only know the road I lived in, but they know the people that I lived with and grew up with for a time when I was in New Brighton. And I says, yeah, it's a shame about Philip that he died of a drugs overdose. I says, he came to visit us and stay with us, me and Jerry and Eddie, for a wee while before he went off and took every tablet under the sun and ended his life. I says, but unfortunately some people are just beyond help, and I says that I think that was the case of Philip. So anyway, I then went into my spiel, talked about Scotland and the site that they were visiting and the history of Scotland, which I do very well because I know a lot about Scottish history. And I sort of sent them on their way to do what they needed to do. And I went in and spoke to the staff and said, you know, I can't believe it, there's people here from New Brighton where I used to live at one point in the Wirral. Then a little later on, I was thinking to myself, because they knew a lot about Philip, who died, and Tommy and Jerry knew where they were, I'm thinking, I wonder if they're Jehovah's Witnesses. So I never took it for granted, because bizarrely when I used to do Airbnb with my wife, once a family turned up who knew all the Eichelsheims and knew Vaughan Road and knew the park, but they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. They were people who just, I think, had gone to school, some of them, so they knew everybody. But these people I wasn't too sure of. And, you know, they went and visited the historic site, they came back. And then somebody said to me, there was 3 of them, 3 of the women were sitting on benches and a couple of others in the periphery. And I said to them, they said to me, so would you keep in contact with any of them anymore? I says, well, I'm Facebook friends with Tommy. And he says, oh, he now lives in Lancashire somewhere or whatever. And I went, oh, I didn't know that. He says, yeah, he's him and his second wife. And I went, oh, I was at his first wife, and one of them said Helen. I says, that's right. So I was at their wedding. And one of the lassies on the benches says, I was at their wedding too. And straight away I knew that everybody there was a Jehovah's Witness. The fact that they knew going back to like 1981 and up to date where they all were, I just thought these are clearly Jehovah's Witnesses. And then I said, oh, I used to be in the Wallasey congregation, and I went out with, you know, Sue Pugh. Oh yes, I knew them as well. And then eventually, and I spoke to other people who in the congregation I knew. And I said, and then I moved to Scotland, and then I was at this congregation. I was saying, but the problem was when I went to Rutherglen congregation, all the people that I knew, and I mentioned some names that they were aware of. I says, we used to wear like second-hand clothes from second-hand shops, but when I went to Rutherglen, it was clearly obvious that they didn't like my attire or my attitude. And I said, eventually that wore me down, and they were like tutting, saying, oh, that's a shame. I said, eventually I gave up the will, you know, the will to do anymore. And then I mentioned, I says, but what really finished me off was the change in the generation. So I mentioned that because I wanted to show that it wasn't just the fact that I left out of dissatisfaction of the way that the elders dealt with me personally, that I could rise above that, but it was the fact it was that the change in the generation finished me off. And I says that ruined it for me, and then I went to another congregation and it just faded away. And I said to them subsequently, I've spoken to a lot of witnesses doing the carting, and I've just said to them, I just don't understand what this is about. When we did street witnesses, we spoke to people. So I was talking about this, and I was also mentioning, I mentioned about also the governing body. I says, for instance, that the number was sealed. I says, but now, I says, if anybody my age in the 1980s had come out and said, oh, I'm a member of the Anointed, we would have laughed them out the Kingdom Hall. We really would. I says, but now you get Jehovah's Witnesses younger than me by at least 10 years. All of a sudden, not only are they of the Anointed, they are members of the governing body. I says, how's that happen when the society said it was sealed? So in the background, this guy turned up and he just turned round, totally hijacked the conversation because these lassies were listening, and they were realising that I was being utterly honest, and I was being heartfelt with them. You know, I wasn't, speaking. You know, I was speaking to somebody who had an experience. I was genuine in the things I was saying. And he comes round and comes straight away and like a super fine apostle and goes, well, yes, he says, but the thing that I always think of is that that shows me that we are the organisations God's chosen, is the fact that who else is doing this worldwide preaching work? Who else is producing all these Bibles? Who else is doing these magazines? I says, to me, it's remaining faithful to God is the most important thing. And I just thought to myself, you're absolutely right. So I then went and said to him, I says, yeah, you're right. You should remain faithful to God, but not to an imperfect organisation. At this point is whole physical appearance change. When all of a sudden I said something which to him appeared like completely apostate by saying, oh no, you can worship God, but you don't need to belong to an organisation. And then he all of a sudden, his demeanour changed, and all of a sudden I literally regressed back in time where you had these men that I had to deal with all my life as being a witness, who just had this way of absolutely diminishing you as a person, diminishing your thoughts and your personality till you felt crushed. Because he did this overblown thing that he reduced me to nothing very quickly, saying, look, yeah, right, I can see where you're going with this. He says, you clearly have an agenda. And I went, no, I don't have an agenda at all. He says, no, you really do. And you could see at this point he was backing away. It was like he was speaking to the devil incarnate, like one of the demons had appeared in front of him. Straight away he's taken the demeanour of somebody who's speaking to somebody who's an apostate, who's a disfellowshipped apostate, instead of somebody who's outpouring his experience as a witness, and the genuine reasons why I feel the way I feel. And he was just like, right, okay, no, and he was actually like this, his hands were actually up like this, no, I don't want to hear anything else you have to say. And it was exactly the way all the elders I spoke to in the past, whereupon you genuinely would try to express how you felt, whereupon it's like, oh no, hold on a second, at this point you've derided God's organisation, and the moment you do that, I don't want to hear anything else that you have to say. As soon as you give an opinion, I'm not interested. If it doesn't come from the Bible, we're not interested. And then I just thought I'd just throw in a grenade in as he was trying to go away, and I said to him, well, tell you what, I had to overspeak him. I says, tell me what then, why isn't Anthony Morris III a governing body member anymore? I was thinking, if the people in the seat maybe don't not know this will be news to them. And he says, what does it matter? I don't care. He's gone, that's it, whatever reasons, I'm not interested. And he says, I don't like the way this is going. And he says, thank you for what you said early on, but I'm walking away from this. And he walked away. And of course, the little sheep on the bench were in the position they were thinking, oh, our shepherd has gone. We must follow the shepherd. So literally, he was saying, come on, we're going now. So they started to follow him. And I literally felt, literally that small, you know. All of a sudden, I lost, what's the word? I'd just gone back to how certain elders made me feel, where they made you feel worthless and nothing because you had an opinion which disagreed with their opinion. And I felt awful. And a few of them were still in our shop, so I still went in and spoke to them, and I just changed back to my, you know, historic mode. Then as I came out, this guy was already in the car trying to herd everybody away from, you know, the apostate in their midst. And then one of the guys said to me, so you would, and then I said to him, so I just said, which congregation you were in? And he says, oh, I was in Wallasey congregation. I says, what's your name? He told me his name. I says, oh, I don't remember you. He says, I was only 9 when you were there. And I went, well, no, I wouldn't remember you, because when I was there, I was like 20, and like, you know, if you're 19, 20, 18, 19, 20, you're a 9-year-old, a kid, and you're an adult. So I says, no, I wouldn't have remembered you. But funny enough, his face, when I first saw this group, for some reason his face looked familiar. Maybe he looked like his father. And I said to him, he says, when I heard your name, you know, he said, when I heard your name, he said, he says, I've heard somebody speak about you. I says, who that? He says, Jan. I went, oh yes. I says, Jan Paprocki. I says, I used to pioneer with him. And he says, yeah, Jan. And some of the other girls around who were still heading towards the car went, oh, he's remarried now, a lovely, I think it's a Filipino girl. He said, a lovely girl from the Philippines. And I went, well, I remember him married to his first wife, because I actually did a wee song at his wedding. I said, I remember his first wife. And of course, then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, you know, all of a sudden, you know, this guy, I knew Jan before they knew Jan. I knew in his Ellesmere Port before they even knew who Jan Paprocki was. And then I went through to this guy and went through all his brothers and his sisters, and we named them, and you know, and he was still talking to me. And you can see the guy, the super fine apostle, was clearly over there thinking, oh my God, this guy's still talking to the apostate in our midst here. And I just talked to him because he was friendly. I think he realised I wasn't disfellowshipped, and he wanted to engage with me. And I was saying to him, I says, yeah, it's because of Jan and Ian Morris and Steve Marks. And he went, oh yes, I know Steve Marks. I says, well, it's because of them I'm here in Scotland in the first place, because they invited me to go to pre-convention work in Edinburgh in 1980. I says, if they'd never invited me up, I wouldn't have met the people that I met at the pre-convention work, and I wouldn't be where I am standing today. It's all because of them. And he says, yeah, I'll mention to Jan that I've spoken to you. He says, okay. He says, he's my congregation overseer. And I just literally was staggered, because last time I met Steve Marks, I went, you know, to meet Steve not so long ago, and he'd said that Jan was back in the truth. And he says, I just don't like the way he went about getting his divorce. And Jan was in a marriage with a lassie called Christine Humphreys from Wrexham, and obviously the marriage was going the wrong way. And then to get out of the marriage, he did what you have to do as a witness. You can't go up to the elders and say, we're not getting on, we really should separate. He went and shagged somebody else, which gave then the Christine the opportunity to scripturally divorce Jan. I don't think she's remarried. And then of course then it gave Jan the opportunity to find a Filipino bride. It gave Jan the opportunity to then come back to the meetings and to get reinstated. And the last time I saw Jan Paprocki was at my stepfather's funeral, whereupon he was preaching to me a long time ago. And I may have told the story before, where he's actually saying to me, you know, I said, I don't go to the meetings anymore. And he was giving the old shit of, oh, Armageddon will come, and next day in paradise we'll be talking about, where's Terry? Where's Terry? And we go, oh, he didn't make it. And I said, because obviously I no longer went to the hall, and I said, yes, I'll be going, where's Jan? Where's Jan? Because, oh, don't you remember? Jehovah hates a divorce. And all of a sudden his little chin hit the floor, because he realised that, yeah, I may have left the organisation, but I remember a lot about the organisation and the people that I knew used to be in it. So for him to say that to me, he's the congregation overseer, I was just staggered, thinking about the way he got out of his marriage by doing something really unscriptural, by committing adultery, that Jehovah hates a divorce, yet somehow now he's seen as this, oh yeah, we all know Jan, he's got his lovely Filipino bride or whatever it is. You know, I'm thinking, oh my God. So after I spoke to them, they went away. I was absolutely raging inside, because all of a sudden I'd just gone to feeling insignificant, whereupon in my job that I do, I feel more significant because I know more about most people upon Scottish and English history when they come to visit our site. But then all of a sudden this guy to reduce me to being not wanting to talk, not wanting to engage, and categorise me as clearly an antichrist or an apostate, even though I was being genuinely heartfelt, it reduced me to feeling nothing again. And I so wished I'd never bothered going down the line, because I feel the same when I speak to the Carters. I just come away regretting what I've done, because I don't achieve anything apart from feeling diminished. And that's how I felt. So hopefully tomorrow, as long as I don't visit another site that I'm working out tomorrow, I feel I have to get over this, because it's set me back literally years. It's funny how you regress. Something can just trigger you, and next thing is you're all of a sudden back to being a Jehovah's Witness and feeling, you know, insignificant and a nobody and downtrodden and worthless. And it just took this man's attitude and just his few words to make me go back to where I felt, which I haven't felt for a long, long time. So there you go. I wish I'd never ever meet a Jehovah's Witness in my life again. I wish I'd never ever see them out in the street. I wish I could put it all behind me. But yet, there's these things all of a sudden, without you knowing, just all of a sudden I'm doing my work, I'm enjoying my day, and all of a sudden I'm hating my day because these people walk into my life. So there you have it. I just thought I'd offload on everybody, because I think for a lot of us we've experienced this exact same feeling. It is horrible. It's amazing. You think you've put it all behind you, but you haven't. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I hope everybody's okay with what they're doing. I haven't been on this for ages because I've just been too busy. But that affected me today in a really horrible way, and I felt I should share with people who understand exactly where I'm coming from. Anyway, see you later, bye.